The beloved pop singer Rae Jepsen is back after 4 years. 4 years! It feels like a lifetime ago since Emotion came out. It was a weird time when that album dropped, man. I feel like at first people weren't ready to admit that they loved a pop album as much as they did. It took a while for people to just embrace the fact that I'm a music nerd, but I can like pop music too. Of course, she did then release the B-Sides project a year later, so we have had music from Rae Jepsen since 2015, and actually I would go as far as saying we've had some of her best work to date since Emotion, which I think is a pretty decent album, but I never quite got the love for it as much as many people did. But for me, the B-Sides and the single Cut to the Feeling are some of her best songs in my opinion. Even with Emotion though, she still has amazing songs on there. We've got Run Away With Me, Emotion, All That is absolutely all fucking that. So yeah, I do generally like Carly, and it's actually been really cool seeing how a one-hit wonder has kind of transformed into a beloved artist. And yeah, sure, she hasn't really had a hit since Call Me Maybe, but I think anyone that's been following music closely for the past 5 years will at least understand the impact she's had in a lot of other areas than just the charts. So it clearly means something that once again this new album from hers, Dedicated, is getting that huge reception from fans, from critics, from music lovers. But of course, here I am to tell you, as always, that I'm just not feeling it that much. In fact, it's quite a mixed bag for me. This album clearly has very catchy melodies throughout. Carly's singing is always on point. Her charisma is always oozing. The production is always on point throughout. It's very, very well produced. It's very clean on almost every track. Perhaps to its detriment at points so, because honestly Carly is kind of doing the same thing she's always done. So I would definitely like to see what she can do over a different type of production. But that's just something I would like to see. For what we've got here, I can't really argue with the production. It is very well produced. It's jam-packed with melodies, as I've already said. It's shiny, it's glossy, it's got that 80s booming sound. But it's just not doing anything for me, man. I'm just not feeling it. It feels too robotic at points, actually. Like, there's just not enough natural feeling coming out of this album. It sounds like an artist is just on autopilot doing really standard performances over standard production. It's like Holly Herndon trained her AI robot to imitate a Rae Jepsen album, and this is what it would end up sounding like. It sounds too synthetic at points. They don't have life in them. The tracks don't naturally flow. Some of the tracks even just kind of hit out with a chorus from nowhere, and it's just like, oh, okay, we're at the chorus now. I'll Be Your Girl is the perfect example of that, where the song barely gets going and then 22-ish seconds in, the chorus just comes through. It doesn't really help that the beat on this track is just so tacky to me. And then you've got the jiggity drum pattern that's going on as well, that just really sounds messy. And then I don't know, I feel like Carly's stretching her vocals really far on the chorus. It just doesn't sound very pleasing to me. Then you've got Automatically in Love, where the drum machine is just so overbearing. It's like I'm listening to a Prince song from 1984. Coming from a Prince fan, by the way, but I'm just pointing out how even when Prince was at his best, some of his drum machines, even today, are sounding a bit dated at this point. So of course, a song in 2019 coming out like a week ago sounds kind of dated too. Coming from an artist as well, by the way, who I've always thought had a great knack for melody. I've said this in a review already. Just doesn't compliment her at all, riding over this type of production. Especially when you've got tracks like Julien, Now That I Found You, and Real Love, which are where she shines. These are the tracks where she shines the most. Now That I Found You is just that hopeless romanticism that she always sells ridiculously well. How she pours her life into just finding this one person. It's just something that she's always done in her music, but yet when she gets it right, it just floors me. The horns on this track are fucking great as well. The chorus is so loud and in your face, but it doesn't get annoying, doesn't get overbearing. It's just the right amount, and Carly is so good at getting that right. I suppose it's like the Runaway With Me of the album, but it's not really the same song, which is again kind of showing how much versatility she has in just the one genre, where she can make two songs have a similar sort of idea and yet they sound completely different. And that's the one thing I do need to compliment about this album as well, because there is versatility throughout. Not every track sounds the same, even though she is playing it very strictly to the synth pop sound. But it's just that every now and then I hit a track and I'm just not feeling it at all. Everything It Needs, just finding it really annoying the way she's singing on this track, especially on the chorus. It's really grating to me. Maybe it wouldn't to you, maybe it's a perfect type of vocals that she's going for here, but for me it's just not working. Right words, wrong time is ridiculously cliche. I've never really understood that concept anyway. How can you be saying the right thing but it just so happens to be the wrong time? Unless I've just never experienced it myself or I've never been aware of it. But even as a cliche, it's never made sense to me. And that's another thing as well. Even when Carly has been doing this type of music before, because she's always singing about the same things, let's be real. It's not really like there's any progress on this album. At least I haven't noticed anyway. But she's never really hit any cliches while doing that. That's, I think, what's made people gravitate to her so well. She's singing about very familiar topics. She's singing over very familiar type of music. That's what people have loved about her, because yes, it's all familiar and yet it sounds fresh, and she's doing it ridiculously well. But on a track like this, Right Words, Wrong Time, you can't say that. This isn't being done well. It's so tepid. In fact, Taylor Swift has been singing about this kind of stuff her whole career, and she's got bashed for it. Everyone bashes her. The same people that love Carly bash Taylor for her generic lyricism. I don't see how you can give this a pass and then say Taylor Swift's Red is a bad album. How? Like, Taylor was arguably doing it better on Red, actually, I'd say. And by the way, I'm not talking about the singles from that album, because the singles from that album are terrible, but I'm talking about the deeper cuts. When you dig deep, listen to a song like Begin Again, and you'll see how talented Taylor is at writing about relationships, even though, again, she has been bashed for it for years. Another example for me across this album of poor lyricism, it's got to be No Drug Like Me, probably the worst song here, I would say. Here on this track, she's talking about how she's this drug and she's very addictive and no one's ever tried a drug like this. If you tried it, you'd be amazed, you'd be intoxicated. Come on. This is painfully basic. This is Camila Cabello levels of like surface level lyricism that you can make. It just really annoys me. But yeah, there are really good tracks throughout the album. Of course, it's Carly. She's always good at making great pop tunes. Like I said, Julien is so slick. It's just so smooth throughout. I just wanted every track to be like this, to be honest. Even again, if it's a track that's not really going out of, you know, Carly's comfort zone in terms of what she's singing about. It's the same type of theme you've heard time and time again, but when it sounds this good, you can't really deny it, and you can kind of overlook that slight niggle. Feels Right as a killer chorus, actually, and the guy's feature, Electric Guest, I believe, he sounds like Nick Jonas, but somehow it doesn't matter because he just sounds so good on this track as well. It's like a Dame Funk synth jam, if you remember that guy's name, who seems to have kind of disappeared at the moment. But he was making some pretty funky tunes a few years back. And I've already mentioned how Real Love is a great track. A great way to close off the album too, because I was kind of losing energy for the album at that point, but then it's like a nice little reminder that no, you know what, this album has those great jams. And just to remind you as well, I'm not actually talking about the deluxe version of this album where it ends off at track 15. I'm talking about the official version of this album where it does end off at track 13, where you've got Real Love closing it out. So yeah, I mean, at this point I can't really say much else, sadly. It's just a mixed bag completely. It's really quite disappointing to say how good her previous material has been, for me anyway. I think at this point it's safe to say that Carly should really switch things up. I mean, she's stooping so low with some of the lyrical themes on this album, and she is touching on what she's already touched on before. Not that I'm telling her that she needs to change things, but I'm just trying to think of her future. I mean, if she comes out with another album in 3 years and she's writing about the same things in her 30s, I just don't know if people are going to buy into it the same way as that they are right now. I just don't know if this album has that longevity, honestly. I guess what I can do right now is just wait for the B-sides of this album because they're going to be killer. Hopefully they're awesome. But other than that, I'm going to go 5.5 out of 10. It's a pretty low rating, I know, but I just can't really say I liked much of this album. Let me know your thoughts on this one though, if you liked it more than me. You probably did. You probably hate my review. You probably hate my face. You probably hate everything about this t-shirt. But yeah, what can you do? Thank you for watching. Have a good day. Subscribe if you haven't already. Tell me in the comments what you think. Bye.